with a background of energy efficiency of commercial buildings. And I bring this all this background to the project in order to help this transformation. Glad to be here.
And you work at?
I work at EDP New. Thank you, Nunu.
Hello, everyone. My name is Urania Kostara. I represent the municipality of Ioannina. We are a fellow city in the Positive project. We are about to start our, we have started writing now our application plans, and we will present today these legal barriers we are facing or we have identified so far regarding Positive. I'm here with my colleague Vasilis Tsouris, who is a permanent staff of the municipality. Yes, and we are very glad to be here.
Yes, thank you. I'm Karim Atolci from Hungary. I'm represented here in Újpest, which is a district of Budapest, the capital. I'm working actually to the IAMA, it's an institute. We assisting Újpest in this as a fellow city, the application strategy, and as well for some new ideas for the 2050 goals. I'm an architect and working for 20 years in European projects.
Good morning. My name is Susanne Nieuwenhuis. I'm the representative of the municipality of Alkmaar. Alkmaar is one of the lighthouse cities in the Positive project, and we're working on deploying several innovative elements in our city to make buildings and districts energy positive.
Hello, good morning. My name is Nuno. I'm working at the municipality of Évora. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I'm working in projects regarding smart cities and efficiency, and now positive energy districts and blocks. In Positive, I'm site manager of the project in Évora, with the cooperation of EDP and Julia now. Yes, that's it.
You can go, yeah.
My name is Matilda. I'm a researcher at the University of Science Technical Wien in Vienna. And we're also working a lot on positive energy districts, not on city level though, but on district level, but indeed in a national context of Austria. And I would say we have a lot of experience in new built districts, but not a lot of experience in heritage districts or cities. So I'm really looking forward for your experiences with your work.
Hello, I'm Maria Gisélia from Portugal. I'm in the Positive team of municipality of Évora. I'm a mechatronic engineer.
Hello, good morning. I'm Daniel Valente. I'm a landscape architect. I'm currently responsible for the division of environment and mobility in the municipality of Évora. I'm looking forward for the knowledge that we are going to hear today.
Hello, I'm Positive. With the municipality of Ioannina, I'm working with the council of the municipality. And we have the thought of the implementation of the plan that came out from this project.
I'm Alice van der Roos. I work as a researcher on energy and water in neighborhoods, but I don't have anything to do with the project, but I'm just curious about heritage buildings and how you're going to make them energy positive. I think that's a big challenge.
I'm Catherine. I'm a PhD student at the Nova University of Lisbon, and I'm poverty and carbon neutrality policy, so I was interested to attend this session for that reason.
Hi, I'm Julia Missoni, postdoc researcher here at EURADA, working also a bit of energy poverty and energy community. So same as the two that preceded me, curious about the project. Thank you.
Hello, I'm James Strasser. I'm from the Department of Urban environmental and urban planning in Flanders. It's in the north, the region in the north of Belgium. I'm a researcher. I'm interested in this project, but I'm not a member of it. We do also research about landscape characterization. So I'm also interested in heritage and the link with energy. And I have a colleague that works on climate and energy. So I come to learn.
Hello, everyone. My name is Li Fan. I come from China, but I work in Technical University of Berlin as a senior researcher. We have cooperation in the field of cultural heritage, also with the municipalities in Germany. So I'm very interested in your project. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Philippe. I work at EDP, just like Julia, so we are part of the Positive project. And in my case, I'm more focusing on developing some of the solutions that are being tested in the lighthouse cities, namely EURADA. And yeah, good to be here and good to have everyone here for this discussion. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to stop screen sharing so that we can see everybody who's joining us online. So please, if you could also introduce yourselves. Maybe we could start with one of our speakers for today, Ms. Cecile.
Yes, thank you. My name is Cecile Nieuwenhout from the University of Groningen, the Center of Energy Law. We are part of the Positive project and we did a lot of legal research there. So that's our role today.
All right. She's also accompanied by Laya. If you could also introduce yourself.
Hi, indeed. Hello, I am Laya. I'm also a researcher in the University of Groningen, and we're here to talk about the legal barriers that the legal framework can bring in the implementation of innovative solutions.
And another speaker that we have for today is Niels.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me loud and clear?
Yes.
All right. My name is Niels Sijpeer. I'm here on behalf of Housing Corporation Van Alkmaar. And within Van Alkmaar, I help with the realization of one of the projects in Alkmaar, that is Bloemwijk. I will tell you and explain you more about that later.
And our speaker for this afternoon, Andreas.
Hi there, good morning everyone, and yeah, it's a real shame that I cannot be with you in person. My name is Andreas Jäger. I work at the local government network ICLE, and I'll give a short overview of projects that we're involved in that relate to energy, but I'd like to also look at more broader, integrated, cross-sectoral neighborhood level approaches, and perhaps there will be one or two interesting things that you can pick out of my presentation in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then we have Anna Claudia, who will also be speaking in a bit.
Yes, good morning to all. I'm an architect and I come from Bari. I work with the Energy at Work for Municipality of Bari. It is a fellow city for the project.
Thank you. And then we have Esther, who is also from one of our fellow cities.
Yes, hello, good morning for everyone. I'm a colleague of Károly, also working at EMI, and we give technical support to Újpest fellow city.
Thank you. Next we have Francisca.
Yeah, hello, I'm Francisca. I'm from EURADA Research, and I'm in the research group for the energy efficiency of historic buildings. So I'm just curious about your project, since we had also last year your presentation at the SBE Heritage Conference in Bolzano. And additionally, I'm currently also president of the International Scientific Committee of E-commerce for energy and sustainability. So I just was interested to listen to your network activities.
Thank you, Francisca. Next, we have Eleftheria. If you could hear us, Eleftheria, if you could kindly introduce yourself.
Hello, from me. For me, yes. I am a participant of the Positive project and member of the municipality of Ioannina. Mrs. Costara is already there to present our team and project. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So now we will proceed to the presentations prepared by our speakers. I will turn the floor to Julia to introduce them.
Yes, and for today's presentation, we will start with Cecile and Laya's presentation about legal and regulatory frameworks for sustainable cities and positive energy districts. So when you're prepared, we can start. Sorry, we just need to change here for the presentation. Can you see the slides?
Okay. I can see the slides. Yes, great.
Yeah, now we can start.
Okay, great. Thank you for having us as part of this session. Yes, Laya and I have been working a lot on the legal and regulatory framework for the heritage cities that are part of Positive, and we would now like to shortly present our findings and also, of course, engage in the discussion with you. And it's already good to know beforehand that I have a small baby which is currently asleep, but which will probably not be asleep by the time of the Q&A. So it is possible that I am not there anymore, but Laya will be there to answer your questions. And if you have a question to me specifically, then email would also work very well. So that's just to start with. Next slide, please. Yes. So yeah, maybe just scroll a little bit further. Yeah. Yes, like this. What we did is basically we looked at the program of Positive. We looked at what are the different things that are proposed by the cities. And in Positive, they are organized around 4 energy transition tracks. And we will present all of them separately and then show you what kind of things happen when you are dealing with, for example, the renovation of buildings or the introduction of smart e-vehicles in your positive energy district. And so we will shortly introduce all the different energy transition tracks. And I will give the first half of the presentation, and then Laya will take over for the second half and the final remarks. Next slide, please. Okay, so yes, what is the most difficult part about the legal framework is that it's not just one thing that you need to take into account, but actually that there are multiple different laws and different acts and orders at lower level that all interact with each other. So basically, you have to look at many different things, and sometimes the laws of the different authorities or the different levels of legislation, so national and local, for example, may also contradict each other. So what we can clearly see is that the legal framework is often not built with the idea of positive energy districts in mind. So that requires an approach that is sensitive of the legal framework and the legal barriers from the start, because either you have to change the whole legal framework, which takes a long time, or you have to adapt to the legal framework that there is. So basically, the technological innovations that there are, they go very fast. So every year there are new innovations. And sometimes what happens is that the technology moves faster than the law. And that's when, when problems start to arrive, because the law is not well, intended to deal with the new technologies. And so, for example, we see with the retrofit of buildings that normal solar cells are incorporated in the legal framework right now, but then as soon as you go for more innovative solutions, like not rooftop but facade or different materials, then it suddenly becomes much more difficult to get this into practice because of the legal framework. So that's just a small introduction of like the things that we deal with. And so this is already a call to action for all of you, and the positive partners have heard this from us before. It's very important that if you as a city or as a representative of an organization run into legal barriers, that you identify them and let us know, because our task is to get all these mismatches together and also try to identify solutions for them. So we cannot encounter all the difficulties by ourselves, because we are not the ones dealing with solutions in practice, but we can help to think about how to solve these issues. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the first thing that we are going to talk about is positive energy buildings, blocks, districts. So the idea that within one district or there is more energy generated than there is used. And in practice, what we focus on in the ETT one is just the buildings or the blocks themselves. So not with connections to other buildings and vehicles yet. That will be the other energy transition tracks. So in this energy transition tracks, the renovation, installation, and recovery of the installations is the main thing. And what we see is that there's lots of attention to solar panels in the rooftop or the facade. And what is of course also especially important in the context of this workshop is that cultural heritage buildings are well, experiencing much more difficulties in reaching energy positivity than other buildings, because they have often a monumental status or the outside looks of the building are protected. And what is a very important solution is that building energy management systems are also very important to take into account all the different energy streams within a building. Next slide, please. So what we found is that for building retrofits is that the standards and norms may prevent the demolishing or reconstructing of a building. So for example, if you want to change the building and add new installations and solar panels, for example, then there's rules about the fuse box, so all the technical installations that require to be more modernized in that case, because you need a much heavier electrical system. But then the building requirements say that it's not allowed to do that in the way that it was done like 5 decades ago. But with heritage buildings, this is often the case. So it is often not so easy to just get a new modern fuse box or fuse area in such an old building. And another issue is that new types of solar panels, like the facade solar panels, are not incorporated in the law yet. So that's very difficult to see then what to do. Also with RES installations more generally, like for example, rooftop wind power well, installations, what we see is that there are often a lot of rules about urban planning and land use. So for example, specific rules on building height and extensions that do not allow installations on top of a building. And then, well, what I mentioned already, the visual impact for heritage buildings and the complex procedures make it more difficult to do these solutions for heritage buildings. So what the big solution is to connect an old building with other buildings in the same area that have less limitations. So a heritage building in a positive energy district may not be positive energy by itself, but because there's other buildings around it in the positive energy district, the whole district by itself can become positive energy positive. And finally, one issue is that smart metering systems are very important, but that the data protection thresholds are very important to take into consideration. So, for example, if you are dealing with a privately owned or residential building, then the electricity usage data will be considered personal data and will be falling under the GDPR. Whereas if you have a public or commercial building, this is not really the case, and it will be much easier to use these data and to share them. So the next ETT is about energy storage and management, and basically incorporating all the buildings together in a grid. So next slide, please. So what we are dealing with here is self-consumption and sharing energy, P2P energy trading. So you use the surplus of your building to heat or to electrify another building. Energy storage, and also increasing the financial value of a district through flexibility services. So what we found is that the limitations of self-consumption are also shaping the amount of solar panels or RES installations that a building can have. So for example, in Portugal, it is only allowed for buildings close by within a certain geographical range. And UIPEST reported that there it is only allowed for certain uses, but for example, not allowed for community uses in apartment buildings, which is a very logical use of solar panels on an apartment building. So these rules, they may seem logical, but in practice, they do cause barriers. And for P2P energy trading, what we often see is that this is just a bit too modern for current cities to deal with, as it is not really implemented in the law. So for example, in Granada, this is reported that it is indeed not implemented in national law. Or in Vidove, the problem is that when the power crosses a land register, or so basically goes to another property, then it will be taxed, and this affects the business case significantly, making it basically almost impossible. Then for energy storage, there's often a lack of definition. So is it only the energy that goes into the battery, or is it also the energy that goes out of the battery, and how is this taxed, for example? The rules about where the battery is installed may differ significantly. So for example, behind the meter or in front of the meter. And what we see a lot is that the taxation of energy storage really affects the business case. And so for a legal perspective, it would be easier to connect energy storage behind the meter, so in the system of the property, but before the meter in the public grid, would be better for the electricity system, because then everybody could use the storage. And then concerning flexibility services, just a little bit, the national laws limit the way consumers or prosumers can offer flexibility services. So even though European law creates the possibility for prosumers to participate in this, in practice it is still very difficult due to national laws and network codes. And then I would like to hand over to Laia.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the third track is integration of e-mobility. And here solutions aim to reduce the impact of electric vehicles in the system and use them to provide flexibility services. Then when considering electric vehicles, we've identified that barriers may arise in 3 different ambits. First, they may arise from urban planning. In this case, it can happen that you might have an ideal space to install a charging point for an electric vehicle, but then the urban qualification for that specific area does not allow for it. The second barrier might arise from excessive bureaucratic burden. In the case of Denmark, for example, the complex permitting system to install smart lampposts has been identified as an obstacle to implement a technically possible project that would allow the reduction of the electric vehicles impact in the system because it provides vehicle-to-grid services. And then finally, we have seen that the applicable law can also affect the business case of a project. And this case is again an example from Denmark, where there's a rule that does not allow to leave taxes on used kilowatt hours if there is a chance that the power comes from mixed renewable energy sources. So this has a direct impact in the retribution systems because it makes it more expensive, for example, for renewable energy communities to sell electricity to electric vehicle owners than it is for a charging, like a regular charging point operator. And this affects the business case of selling electricity to electric vehicle owners, and thereby it limits the integration of e-mobility in the grids. Then this, I think it's already covered. Yeah, same for this one. I was also, so our fourth track is citizen driven co-creation, and here solutions aim to engage citizens in the energy transition and incentivize public participation. Public participation is key for the acceptability of innovative solutions because it could otherwise fuel public resistance and opposition. And in this case, barriers can arise from a slow or too complex participatory systems where only a part of the population is represented. And they may also arise from data protection law because participation tools need to be aligned with data protection as they require making use and processing sensitive data that can be even personal data from the citizens that are involved. So in our lighthouse and fellow cities, making sure that the implementation of innovative solutions is in line with all these requirements can slow down the implementation of innovative solutions, and thereby it is important to make these processes as agile as possible. So as a final remark, we thought it was important to consider how can we overcome these barriers. And from our perspective, it is first really important to put things in perspective because modernization is something that happened it's something of all times. As an example, castles used to have no sockets either, and they ended up having them. Then it is creativity and solidarity are also key elements to deliver a smart heritage cities. In this case, solidarity involves the use of, for example, site buildings when energy positivity is difficult to reach due to regulatory barriers in one building. In this sense, as Cecile was saying earlier, connecting heritage buildings with other buildings might be a solution that requires a little bit of a creative thinking, but is the way to achieve energy positivity in this kind of buildings. And but however, we consider that at this initial stage, it is most important to identify and report these mismatches, and here lays the relevance of positive and other projects for replication plans and the creation of smart cities. And this is all for our presentation, and we would be really happy to answer any of your questions in the Q&A, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Cecile. Thank you, Laia. Now we go for Neil's presentation on the topic of preparing the replacement of 179 cultural historical homes in Boelwijk. I'm sorry. Bag. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for this introduction. Hello, everyone from Holland. Unfortunately, I was not able to join you in Bolzano, so I'm doing it from my office in Alkmaar. I'm here on behalf of Housing Corporation van Alkmaar, and I will take you along the roller coaster of preparing the replacement of now 179 existing homes in Bloemwijk, which is Dutch for flower neighborhood. And I will touch three themes. It's the social, legislative, and technical aspects. And as I only have 15 minutes, I will only slightly touch them. So if you want to know more, you can always ask me later on. So Bloemwijk, it's built in the 1920s. And in the left map, you see Alkmaar above left, above Amsterdam. There we have the city center in the upper middle picture on the right, and then in the red area you have the flower neighborhood Bloemwijk, and the red area is the apartment building and the new houses that are being constructed at this moment in Alkmaar now. So just a little bit back, only 55 dwellings make part of the positive project, and as you can see, small and narrow streets, small houses, and that makes renovation from future-proof perspective very difficult. How to make this more interesting as it is now is with these small houses with only single brick walls without insulated cavities. Very hard, because if you want to insulate these houses, you have to put insulations on the outside, making the streets even more narrow and very expensive to do, or you have to do it on the inside, making the houses even smaller and do not meet the current demands of a tenant yet. But okay, next slide, please. So Van Alkmaar decided to renovate in first these houses, but later on we decided to demolish them and new construction, put the new houses there. And what all came by in this dilemma, in this decision, is of course the historical and cultural value. I'll come back to that later. We have to deal with social housing. That means that you have to be careful and you have to be wise in how to deal with costs and of course the rent of the tenants. The existing houses have very, very bad indoor quality with all kinds of moist problems, etc. There's a huge maintenance demand also for the old houses. Of course, we see, due to all kinds of things going on in Europe, the gas price going up, and as gas-fired boilers are the standard in the old dwellings there, the energy costs rise also very, very much. So actually, Van Alkmaar decided these houses are not capable of making it future-proof in a responsible way with perspective to the cost. So we decided to demolish them and put new buildings there. But then you still face a lot of problems. Okay, next slide, please. So the plan, you all know this man, I think from the 80s, the man from the 18. And what we did, we put up a campaign first to get more connected to the tenants. So we helped them by cleaning up the houses, because preparing such a project needs that the tenants that want to stay in the neighborhood need to live somewhere else for a while. So you need to connect to the tenants. You need to get to know them better. And one first action was helping by cleaning up the houses. Later on, when there was a first design of the house in a study, that was even before the the constructor was chosen, we crafted a model of the first design of the house. So everybody was, or a lot of tenants joined that. So there was also a nice initiative to get more connected to the tenants. Of course, there was a residence committee organized that took part in also setting up a tender. So Van Alkmaar set up a tender for the new construction houses together with the residence committee. Actually, I put the website where you can find more details about the plan in the corner below in blue. So if you want to know more about the project, and you can find more details there. Okay, let me get back a little bit to the Dutch building regulations, because I am a little bit, well, not pessimistic, but there is a thing going on in the Netherlands you should all know about. From the perspective of regulations, there is, of course, a law. We call that the building law. And this building law is described in regulations. So each building in the Netherlands, each new building in the Netherlands has to meet these regulations. But these regulations are made by, of course, people like me, an advisor or a consultant, but also suppliers of installations and installation material join the groups where those regulations are being made. So you see that these regulations are not hard physics, but it's full of political choices, making the Dutch building regulations, just as everywhere in Europe, it's everywhere the same in Europe, not hardcore physics where you can calculate all kinds of energy demands and check if that's okay. But it's a political document where technologies are sometimes not being judged by real performance, but also by a lobby, the installation lobby or an insulation lobby. That makes that if you design new buildings, people are using these regulations to design as cheap as possible buildings, and so you create what I call a culture in the building sector that it's called building as worse as you can do, which is of course cheap. You can earn the most money out of it, and it's also what a client of a constructor also always wants. He wants a low price. So this culture of building as low as possible is very hard to deal with if you want a high ambitious project. And the Dutch building regulations, well, we have 4 important indicators. I've stated them here. I'm not going to go in detail, but for positive, we want to have energy positive houses. So this first phase in the project of Bloemwijk, those 55 dwellings, need to be energy positive altogether. The next slide, please. I hope I'm being clear, and otherwise you can ask questions, of course, about it. So we decided to put new houses there and demolish the old ones. And then everybody of a lot of people, of course, rised up and said, do not demolish it. Please leave it because it's cultural heritage. Well, it's not actually, but so all kinds of processes started, and finally the decision was made that it is going to be demolished. There will be new buildings, but it took quite some time and quite some emotions from people also. But I have to say that most of the tenants, so let's say 80, 85, 90%, is happy that there are new houses going to be built. So there was quite a process. Next slide, please. Here you see a little overview of the houses that come back in the area. 45 apartments in 2 big apartment buildings. In the other part of Bloemwijk, we also have a lot of more small houses, and 10 family houses are part of the project in Positive. So first, the constructor designed it with actually 332 solar panels on the roofs on the 55 dwellings. That became 886 solar panels to make it energy positive. So we increased the solar power by that was first 100 kilowatt peak to 310 kilowatt peak. We're also using more efficient solar panels with a higher efficiency. Okay, building and installation specs. Of course, we are going to insulate them very well. We use triple glazing, make them very airtight, have mechanical ventilation with heat recovery, which is very energy efficient. So we try also to increase the self-consumption of the solar energy that is generated on the roofs by smart controls. In the neighborhood, we expect to have 2 electrical vehicles that can be shared by the tenants, and we are going actively to control heat pumps for demand and supply matching. Smart grid, they use it. And that's necessary because this picture is in the Netherlands from only a few days ago, and it shows the problem of the electricity grid. It looks like the Corona map last year, I always say. And in the left map, you see the problem that is arising with renewable energy. If you put solar roofs on your roof, or you solar panels on your roof, or you put a windmill in your garden or whatsoever, you face the left map where the red areas are the red areas where you are not allowed to feed in renewable energy anymore because of the grid is just full, it's congested. And on the right part, you see the problem of just connecting to the grid. So the red areas are the areas where no new connections to the grid are being made. So if you build new houses in the red area, you have quite a challenge to connect them to the grid. As we are replacing houses, we can connect to the grid. But the map on the left showing the challenge in the solar panels is going to be a challenge and a risk for our housing corporation to feed back the solar electricity because the map is slowly and more coloring red. So it's a huge problem in the Netherlands. Maybe it's good to skip this one, only if there is interest in this. Maybe I have some time to tell you about just the process. We're starting building now. I have some pictures I can share if you want from the situation now. First delivery we expect in January 2023. We go for monitoring at least 1 year. I hope 1.5 years at least. That's what we asked for. And phase 2 and 3 of the project are being finished in 23 and 24. So the last slide, please. That's the questions. Okay, then we can go back to the split incentive. So please go back 3 slides. Yes, that's no. Sorry.
That's the one. Yeah.
The next one.
This one.
Yes, this one. Thank you. First, we had the plan to use a Dutch law, which is called the Energy Performance Allowance, EPV. And this EPV solves the problem of the so-called split incentive. Because what we see, not only in the Netherlands, but it's everywhere in Europe, is that a house owner, a housing corporation who owns the houses, if they invest in renewable or sustainable measures, they have to invest, of course. The profit goes to the tenant. So it's hard to make a proper business case for this. So the tenant pays energy bill, the tenant pays rent, and if the housing corporations decide to renovate, yeah, the profit goes to the tenant. So that's the left picture. If you go to the right picture, that's where the energy performance allowance comes in. We have made a law that if you make a house so energy efficient that you generate all your electricity that you need, all your energy on the roof, you don't have an energy bill as a tenant anymore. That's quite a profit. So this old energy bill is transformed in what we call energy performance allowance. So that amount of money together with the rent you pay to a housing corporation. And the housing corporations pays this EPV, this energy performance allowance, to the builder to pay off the renovation. So there you solve this problem of the split incentive. And this law is being reviewed actually at this moment in the Netherlands. I'm one of the people in the team making this new law fitting in the current situation, which is quite a task because of all these unstable things going on with energy bills. But this helps housing corporations to make their investments for renovations more effective. And I think it's a very good law, and maybe possible on European level also. 10 o'clock, so I did exactly 45 minutes. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, let me know. And I hope you enjoy your day today.
Thank you, Niels. Very interesting presentation. So now I just want to say some words before going to the cities of this project. So yesterday we heard about new technologies and the advances we are doing in research and research centers and PhD students. Today we've heard throughout this morning, Cecile, Laia and Niels, which are working directly with municipalities. So they make the bridge between what we heard yesterday about innovative solutions and the municipalities. And right now we are going to hear the experiences directly from the people that are working in municipalities and what they are facing as legal and regulatory restrictions within their cities. So it's not all about developing solutions. It's also to understand the local context, the laws that exist in the country, and in the end, how we can implement them locally in these historical sites. So as a first presentation, we will start with Nuno Bilo from Évora City. Évora is a lighthouse city of this project, and it has predicted a lot of solutions to be implemented so far. And right now, Nuno will present the legal restrictions and the barriers and the challenges that they faced so far in order to support other cities implementing in their local context. So Nuno, go ahead.
Can you give me the remote?
Yeah, I can. Up here.
Thank you. So I will share experiences that we have in Évora regarding the implementation of the solutions of Positive. This is an important project to the city, as we are trying to make this historic city of Évora an example how to overcome the restrictions and the barriers that we have when try to implement solutions in an historic city, a protected city as Évora. And starting with this slide, it shows the 3 positive energy blocks that we defined in the beginning of the project. We have 3 energy blocks, but now we had recently one discussion about the definition of the energy block and energy district within the consortium of the project. And we make a little change about that definition, but for the main idea, we have 3 areas where we want to be positive in energy in the city. And the main area, it's the first one, it's the center of the city, because it's the part of the city that is protected. It have solutions that we want to test and how to implement innovative solutions to produce energy within the walls of the historic city. Then we have 2 other areas on the city, one outside of the historic center, near, that is the industrial park, where we want to implement solutions that are more focused to the industry and services that and commercial services that are in that area. And then we have another area that is mainly residential, where we want to apply some solutions that will test some more about the flexibility of the grid. Then we move to the main concern of the project, that has to be with the protection of the heritage of the city. It's one World Heritage City since 1986. So and all the buildings inside the walls of the city are protected. Not only the monuments, but all the buildings are protected. So the restrictions are applied to all the buildings. So we need to find solutions that can be integrated to the buildings and preserve their value. And so for that, we define two main solutions that aim to get to that objective. One is the self-consumption using municipality buildings, and we will install solutions within Positive in 8 municipal buildings and 2 car parking lots. And we also are developing a community solar farm that will provide energy to the historic center. So starting with the collective solar self-consumption community that we are creating, it is a new kind of solution that we are developing in Portugal, as all the legislation regarding the creation of collective solar self-consumption is new also, and we are one of the first projects in Portugal that are creating this solution. So we are doing this with we are doing these collective self-consumption to the 8 municipal buildings inside the historic center of the city. And we will all the energy that will the surplus energy that will be produced by the municipal buildings will provide also energy to other municipal buildings inside the historic center. This collective self-consumption community that we are creating, we submit a licensing to the Authority of Energy, Portuguese Authority for Energy, and also a pilot project regarding a new sharing coefficients, and we submitted this pilot project to the National Energy Regulator. And we still waiting for these approvals from the two, but we already have one response from the energy regulator regarding the sharing coefficients. We can use them, but only in a sense of not in a real way, but only for the test. Then we have limits for the distance between buildings. I think that Cecile mentioned about that. We have limitations about the distance between buildings. And we have also limitations regarding the production that cannot surpass the consumption. The production must be lower than the consumption. And we have also limitations regarding the injection of the energy in the grid. So these are the main concerns. Then we have the solutions by itself. So we have 5 different BIPV solutions that we are developing for the municipal buildings. And we are developing these solutions with the municipal and the technical municipal, the technicals from the municipality, also technical partners from the project, and the users from the buildings, the schools, and also the cultural administration and also the energy administration. And for these solutions, we have some restrictions that are that we need to comply. That are the locations, also the areas occupied that we need to, and also the visual impact of the solutions. And one example of one of the solutions that we found for EURADA, it's the shingles, the traditional shingles, the clay shingles that we will install. The traditional shingles in EURADA have one visual appearance as the ones that you see in the right down corner of the slide. And we found a solution for this with the PV panels inside inside of the shingle. So we don't see any PV on the top of the shingles. This solution have a limitation on the efficiency, but it's okay for what we want, because we want to preserve the city center, and we need to find solutions that are integrated. So we have one solution that have already a new version and more efficient version for this. But we can have one idea that this type of shingles will be 3 times less efficient when compared with conventional PV panels. Then we have one important solution also, that is the community solar farm. It's a power plant in the outskirts of the city, and this will provide energy to all the houses inside of the walls of the city, because if the houses have no areas where to use our solutions that we are installing for the historic center, we give this opportunity to the citizens that live in the historic center to produce their own energy, having a part of the power plant. And so we, from the municipality of EURADA, are developing this solution that must be crystal clear to the citizens. This is a solution that must be for the citizens, that they should know that will be the owners of their energy produced in this power plant, and not a commercial solution. So we are having the support of the National Agency for Energy, which is an important support for this solution. As I said, we need to guarantee that this solution is attractive for citizens, so that we can attract the citizens to be in this project, and also for the different stakeholders of the city, the ecosystem. We'll have 6 megawatts total capacity for this first version, in 3 different zones of the incineration, different zones, 2 in the industrial park and 1 in old waste landfill, which is a good solution because we are converting this old waste landfill to produce green energy. And we will divide also these 6 megawatts in 1 megawatt to avoid the need of licenses. And also the energy costs are related to the areas that we defined. So there will be differences in the energy produced, the cost of the energy produced for each one of the zones that we have for this project. And these were the main experiences that we share here in this meeting.
Okay.
Forever.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to the Alkmaar situation and understand what they identified as challenges and barriers so far for their deployment of the solutions. So Suzanne.
I'm going to, okay. How does it work? Forward. Okay, thank you very much for the time and the opportunity to tell anything about the project in Alkmaar. For the people listening in, I would like to focus in on some of the challenges. And I'm focusing in on the role of the municipalities. And I'm not going to tell everything about the complete project because we have several partners. But just on the innovative elements that we as a municipality have to implement. One of our main projects actually is to making the sport complex the main energy positive. It's a big sport complex with a big ice ring and also some sport halls. And if everything works out at the end of this year, it will be free of gas usage. That's what we hope that we can reach. But as not being a technical engineer, not being a legal expert, I did encounter some lessons and experiences I would like to share with you. So I will zoom in on those. So I'm not the expert, and Cecile already told some things, but one of the issues actually that we're having at the moment is the main will be energy positive. We will have rest heat, and we would like to share it with some of the plots around this building. So the first question of my alderman was, but Susan, how does it work? Because are we now an energy producer? Is that the role of the municipality? Is it something we can do? Is it something that we are obliged to do? Isn't it something for the market to solve this issue? So, that are the first questions that arose. And actually, there is going to be some changes in the Dutch law. And actually, the new climate minister would like to have that the heating networks that are going to be implemented, that it's ownership of public ownership, 51%. But it's not yet implemented. But it does give some opportunities also for public organizations to have more influence on deploying, realizing heat grids, because now it's actually up to the markets. There's also sometimes what also Cecile said, that there's a conflicting laws or conflicting ideas. So in the start of the positive case, the idea was that there was going to be a heating grid started actually Bloemwijk being connected to the heat grid. Then another project would be connected, and then the sport complex would be connected. And that also was a local law that new buildings are going to be connected to the heat grid. But the business case actually didn't work out because new buildings are almost energy neutral. They don't have a lot of demand for heat. So actually the business case for our partner HVC didn't work out. So there, the first thing happened for, okay, our local heat grid that's connecting all the different PEDs or PEPs didn't work out. So that's where you see that, you know, some regulation or some law you think in your local construct in 2006, I think this started. You think it will work out, but now you realize that, you know, because of all the innovations, it's no use actually anymore. I did find out that, you know, you have to have a lot of permits to do anything about buildings, about constructing, and also some local heritage regulation. And I'll give a small example of one of the innovative elements that's actually giving me some headaches. And it's actually about all the technical and heritage aspects. I must admit that within the Alkmaar consortium or within the Alkmaar plan, our historical center is our replication center. So all the areas actually where we are implementing our innovative elements are in the surroundings of the real old buildings. So that gives us a little bit of opportunity to learn about the things we are implementing and trying to think about how we're going to implement them actually in the, you know, in the really old buildings in the city center. We have one advantage. We have HVC. That's one of the biggest biomass centers, centrales in the Netherlands, and it's located in Alkmaar. So we have a very important partner for our heating grid in Alkmaar, and it gives us also some opportunities. It's publicly owned, but it's also privatized. It sounds a little bit weird, but all the local governments are actually the shareholders of this company, but still the company has to, well, they don't have to make a lot of money, but they have to have, you know, solid business cases. So that sometimes actually contradicts also in planning your demands on heat in the city. And there's also some issues about, you know, how to create an energy community, how to share energy, because in the law, it still says that every single household is going to be connected to gas. If you want to get rid of your gas, you actually have to pay for to get disconnected, and you have a connection to the grid. So it's hard to have, you know, like a real community. So I think I said already some of the issues that, for instance, by getting a real local heat grid and sharing the residual heat in the main is quite difficult. We were selling the plots to some companies, so they actually are going to make construction. So that's a good opportunity to make them connected to the local heat grid, but actually it wasn't an obligation. So we have to seduce them to join, to get connected instead of that we could obligate them because it was against the law. Well, the challenges of the net congestion, I think Niels already said something about that. I just would like to get into one of the things that I find quite interesting is actually the smart lamppost, because that's something we wanted to implement in the city center. So it's a historical design of this lamppost. We would like to have connections for charging boats and cars. And it's hard to manage it actually, because this is a pre-descripted design and it is a cast iron design. And the technical, you know, it's too big, the meter is too big. So, but we cannot extend the design because it's a mold. So we're just thinking about, is it possible to change the design? So my colleagues say no. Is it possible to change it in another kind of construction, like, you know, don't use iron, but can we use something else? No, because then it's not safe anymore, because you have some, you know, local laws that we have to adjust. So we're actually struggling on this one. So it looks very simple. It looks very, you know, it's like, oh, let's have our public space being as open as much and not having all kind of equipment. but actually it's quite difficult on the technical and all the well, regulation issues. I'll just have a few ones because I think I would like to tell a lot more, but I'll just pick the ones. The one I also find is quite difficult is actually the data. For exchanging data, monitoring everything, what is happening in the mains, but also to expose it and to make it publicly valuable for everyone, it's actually quite difficult. It's also, you know, within the project, of course, we have signed like a GDPR statement, but actually that's not enough for the Dutch government, the Dutch law. You do need separate contracts between the partners. So for instance, we have made a separate contract within Holland because they are having the platform and we're going to use it. So you need a lot of also data proof special contracts. And I'll have a little bit more time. So actually, what I encountered as being just, I just say just a program manager, that, you know, you do have to have a lot of insights in national laws, local laws, heritage laws, building plans, and it's also you're having you have an innovative project. So it's actually innovation always goes before laws, and sometimes it's quite difficult to convince also your local authorities or your element to go for it and make a pilot or something like that. But I must admit that actually there is now the window of opportunity because of the high gas prices, actually also because of the net congestion. You know, it does give you also the opportunities to push forward for some innovative solutions. For instance, I've heard that within Alkmaar, you saw we were in the red zone for the net congestion, but actually Viran, also a partner within the project, they are allowed to put a battery in one of our replication areas, so new companies can actually get connected. So then the storage will be outside of the meter instead of inside of the meter. So actually it's also, the problem also gives some window of opportunity at the moment. And hopefully the new laws that are coming will give us some more space for how do you say it, develop our innovative elements. Thank you very much. I've got a lot more to tell, but maybe we have some more time afterwards.
Suzanne, very interesting job you're doing in Alkmaar. Now let's go to Orania from Ioannina. When you're ready.
Yes. Just before I start, I want to say that we as a fellow city, we are not, for those who are not in positive, we are not implementing solutions, rather we make these replication plans. We study the solutions from the lighthouse cities. The barriers we present today, they are higher level barriers. We don't go into the technical details like fire protection or building permits because the legislative framework, of course, is huge, and many details we can't even touch in a 5 minutes presentation. So the solutions presented in positive, there are, I don't know, maybe 120, 130. So we have done some SWOT analysis on the solutions we have chosen. We have pre-selected for replication. And in all 4 energy transition tracks, we can summarize them here. There are barriers related to delays in the deployment of smart metering, the need for restructuring of the retail market, which will allow for new business models for electricity service providers, delays in licensing of large RES installations, significant delays in the procedures of full and effective integration of the EU directives concerning energy communities, slow development of the electrification of mobility in Greece, and slow adoption of waste management related EU directives and the Greek legislation. A fundamental precondition for all positive solutions is the establishment of a smart meter infrastructure, starting from smart metering, which is unfortunately lagging behind expectations in Greece. 8 years after the announcement by the Hellenic distribution network operator of the first tender for the installation of smart meters in Greece, and after countless postponements, it seems that the ambitious project that will lead to the gradual replacement of all existing electricity meters with smart meters is on track for implementation, with 2030 being the completion horizon for the low voltage. The automated meter infrastructure will transform the grid and will lead, among others, to the modernization of the operator's operating model, the overall restructuring of the retail market and the strengthening of competition, the creation of new business opportunities and commercial strategies for energy service providers, effective demand response, which is at the core of the EU target model, allowing to shift load from high to low cost hours and thus perform dynamic pricing, facilitation of smart EV charging, and coordination of storage units, including car batteries and their participation in the markets. Another barrier, we are no different than anybody else, grid congestions and all sorts of problems regarding RES and the challenge we have in shutting down our lignite-fired power plants. We have slow development of home PV systems due to promotion of large-scale RES and low incentives for homeowners, plus the tenant-landlord issue that Niels mentioned, and the split incentive. Licensing of bigger RES projects can currently take up to 5 years. There is a new legislative reformation which will ensure completion of licensing within 14 months. Slow development of mass electricity storage facilities like hydro and large batteries due to institutional barriers. Residents, municipalities, and environmental associations still hinder or prolong licensing and operation of RES facilities. And then we have since the 5th week that we have adopted the EU target model, we have experienced wholesale and retail market distortions, which we're trying to tackle through a new market reform plan, which is currently under EU consultation. Going to the renewable energy communities, which we find one of the most important smart heritage solutions, because we as well have identified that smart heritage buildings can become positive energy only through virtual net metering. So the current legislative framework is complex and fragmented into many different laws and ministerial decisions, which intensifies the complexity of the process of developing renewable energy projects by energy communities. Starting from the beginning of 2022, all energy communities, without an exemption, should compete with private investors in bids to ensure operational reinforcement of RES projects, which is expected to hinder the participation of energy communities. On the same note, the requirement of proximity of energy communities, which aims theoretically to empower local communities, turns into a competitive disadvantage compared to private investors who are not subject to corresponding geographical constraints. And then we have the significant delays in the procedures of full and effective integration of the directives RED II and I and D, which is expected to contribute to the removal of administrative and other obstacles faced by the energy communities, to the simplification of licensing procedures and strengthening of the direct participation of citizens. Regarding electrification of mobility, Greece is one of the least prepared countries in the EU. There's a critical lack of adequate infrastructure. Greece ranks in the top 5 EU countries with the lowest number of established EV chargers. This is due to delays presented in the program of elaboration of the electric vehicle charging plans by the municipalities. I think Ioannina recently submitted theirs. The new national plan for e-mobility announced in 2020 aims to introduce a series of economic and other incentives subsidizing the vehicle acquisition with a goal of 1 in 3 vehicles to be electric by 2030. And of course, what is expected to hinder e-mobility is a problem we had already due to the EU target model, but now due to the war, the current increase in electricity prices is expected to hinder extension of waste management issue is painful for Greece. Greece ranks last among the 28 EU countries in terms of solid waste management. Most solid waste is still disposed of in landfills, and reuse and recycling are extremely limited, not exceeding 18%. Greece has been paying millions in fines since 2014 for non-compliance with EU law provisions in the field of solid waste and urban wastewater. In this regard, the government has announced a new legislation which modifies the laws for waste management and recycling, incorporating the related EU directives. And at the same time, the regulatory framework for alternative management systems based on the principle of extending producer responsibilities strengthened by reducing bureaucracy, enhancing transparency, and increasing accountability. And pay-as-you-throw system becomes mandatory for all municipalities with a population of more than 100,000 inhabitants from January 2023, and in municipalities with more than 20,000 inhabitants from January 2028. We'll see what happens there. There is much to be done. I don't know how much prepared we are. And then last slide is digitalization. It's a situation rather than a legal barrier. Greece unfortunately ranks again, as you can see, 25th in the 28 countries, almost at the same position as Bulgaria, so practically second from the last. Some key facts, this is the Digital Economy and Society Index. Data is available online. Although Greece continues to improve its performance in almost all dimensions, in most cases it still scores below the EU average. On the integration of digital technologies into business activities, Greece is well below the EU average. And some positive facts on the digitalization of public services in 2020, Greece scores above the EU average in the number of government users, which was again accelerated during the pandemic. And Greece far exceeds the EU average in open data readiness, having already implemented legislation and policies. I think that's all from me. I was stressed about time, so I said everything very quickly, but I'm very glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Aranya. Very, very interesting to see the situation in Greece.
Yes, because I wanted to say that it's true, it has been mentioned many times here in the conference as well. We have all the same targets, but very, very different starting points.
Yes, yes,
and,
of course. Thank you. So now, Yush Pest, let's go to Carol.
Yeah, can I just...
When you're ready.
Thank you. So thank you very much for the opportunity. And I will, of course, repeat something with the legal and regulatory barriers, but I would like a little bit more speaking about what does it mean it's positive energy district, how we approach for that, and then, of course, take the advantage of speaking about this one. So the first of all, where is Újpest is, well, in Hungary is the middle of Europe, you can see. I don't know that. So just in the right above, and Újpest is it's a district of Budapest. Budapest is the capital of Hungary, 1.8 million, and you can see it is just alongside the Danube and just in the north. It should be mentioned that it used to be independent small cities just up to 1950. So therefore, for example, such a nice townhouse has been built because it was an independent city. They have some kind of special prestige of the things. But however, of course, this is the part of the 23 district. So this is we choose a pretty greater replication area. You can see in in purple and in green even longer. I try to explain why. So the left, that is in the middle, that is the big road of the Saint-Istvan Street, and then the left side is the old city center. Unfortunately, not very big, but you can see in the red point, this is the nice townhouse, and around big market, which old 1 or 2 story houses, and as well, this is the city center. And for the left side, this is a typical housing estate built in the 60s to the 80s, with as well some schools and elderly homes and so on. And so we try to put the two things together and see how we can make this area as some kind of model positive energy district. And of course, it will be spread off for the district and later the capital. So what it was very important just to make in a state of the art, how we are. And you can see that this is the floor area is 269,000. So it's a pretty big one. There is more than 2,500 dwellings in that. So it's really a part of the district. And you can see as well the case of that in Hungary, typically as in a Middle European country, the heat demand of the heating and domestic hot water is much bigger than the electricity for the case. So then, of course, our main focus is actually for the heating. However, you will see that we're starting to use electricity as well for the heating, like it's a heat pump on the sewage. So this is the some description as well. So the great electricity demand is 13 gigawatt-hour per year, and total heat demand is 43. So about 3 times is typical in our areas. You can see as well that in this area, the district heating is very strong. I mean, comparing even to the other part of the town, where in Hungary about 20% is heating, 20% of the house is connected for the district heating, but in this case, even higher, of course, is big because this is in a city center. And so that gives, of course, an opportunity and as well just to, if we want to change, of course, we should focus on the district heating as well. And what is a specialty that we are a special renewable aspect of that, this is a sewage water heat. So there is a big sewage grid, and then we take 1.8 gigawatt-hour from the sewage, but even it could be increased. It is basically for the town hall. We have a new market, and as well and another office building of the local government. So, and then as we go through for this energy tract, of course, we as well collect some of the most important issue which we find interesting for that. Yes, I take part for that. The first thing, of course, that there should be, of course, renovation. So without renovation, we couldn't change a positive energy building. So you can see for all of that. The other is that we should like to decrease the energy demand. And what is very interesting is here that how we can make it in the higher efficiency or use our efficiency of this sewage water-based heat pump. And we are planning to create a 5th generation district heating and cooling. That means that it's a very low temperature, so 20% temperature, and the heat pump system, of course, which is a cooperation with the Budapest District Heating Company. And as well, we have, of course, other issues for the PED areas. You know, from the positive that we have a lot of small but very interesting innovation, but of course, it is it has not as much impact as I mentioned before, some bigger one. Well, we have not too much just to discuss in very detail for that, but anyhow, I think it's important that Újpest is as well is committed for to be climate neutral one. So something about the barriers, challenges, opportunities. So first of all, the big barriers is legal free trade of electricity is as simple. It's more complicated. I must correct maybe it was some misunderstanding. So the problem of the apartment house that it can be used only for the common purposes. So quite opposite that it was maybe some misunderstanding. So the problem is that it shouldn't be used by separately of the apartments. Of course, we have challenges, which is a price increases, lack of skilled workers as well for the renovation. Of course, we are needing new business models as well. But as well, we have opportunities. Back to the barriers, we like the most important barriers is lack of pilot projects and experiences, and as well that the project development assistance basically for the residential sector is low. And of course, I think that should be much more renovation if this project development management assistance would be greater. And regarding the opportunities, I think that now even these new challenges of the energy efficiency and the renewable is, now everybody is clear that it is important. I think the technology more or less available. We have as well some pilot in Hungary as well. And last, I would like to speak something about this pilot energy communities, which is a starting point. So this is there is a pilot tender in Hungary, which is organized by our institute. There was a pilot, so a tender was 23 project eligible and 14 was funded over 10 million euro, the range between a half and a 1.15 million. The beneficiaries was local government, aggregators who organized energy communities, and as well DSO building owners. There was technical solution basically focusing on the storage PV system, which can be small with one or two apartment house to even field of PVs. There are different variants of electric storage between 5 to 200 kilowatt, and of course, for the e-mobility, EV chargers, V2G system, and as well as smart meters is now as an important issue. So, and we hope that maybe 2 years later we can report about the outcome of this. And so thank you very much for the interest.
Thank you so much. Also interesting topics for discussion in order to reach the positivity in the city. So we are only missing one presentation from Bari municipality, which will be Ana Claudia presenting.
Yes, I'm here. Can we start with the first slide, please? Yes, next. Okay, here you have the map that represents other city, and we are one of the fellow city in the project. The second one, please. Okay, here you have the diagram that explicated the process to make for the construction to replication plan for all the fellow cities. And after, please. Yes, you have here the innovation solution on we are interesting. On this presentation, we are talking about e-mobility first, because for us it's very important. The second one, please. Yes. Okay. Bari is a very big city in the south of Italy, the second most important economic center in southern Italy after Naples. The city has two phases because we have an historical center, very interesting, and the second part is elegant work district. We have three areas for replication. Yes, please, the other slide. And the first replication area is the historical center. The second one is in San Cataldo, near the center, and the third is in San Girolamo, where we have a big project of waterfront, and we have built into that we make a renovation on it. Yes, please, the other slide. Okay. For master plan, we have analyzed the urban and the regulation reference, acquisition information about the context, and we have make a roadmap for a replication plan with the best practice studios. And now we are defining the guideline for metropolitan country impact. Okay, the next, please. Yes, here you have a concept about our idea of city for the future, because the idea is to create infrastructural connection to product and manage information for crucial issues such as mobility, the rational use of energy resource, the quality of the environment, and the management of energies. In the context with the citizen are not only consumer of information, but themselves producer of information. So we have this portal that's called Musica that connect very smart citizen and decision maker. Next, please. Okay, we have another portal very important to make decision that called Bari Partecipa, that connect the municipality of Bari and the citizen to make decision. And an important point is the next one. An important point in the city, the center, that is a point where we meet with citizens to organize the life of the municipality. Next, please. Yes, here is a very light city vision for us that contemplate this six word. Smart city is fair, livable, sustainable, efficient, accessible, and attractiveness. And then, okay, we can go to the next. Yes, we have here you have our challenges for this project, and we are concentrated to study method for energy saving and waste reduction, control and management of energy dispersion, control and reduction of consumption in the public space, and control of data and the dissemination. And then, please, the other slide. No, there are other slides. No. Oh.
Okay, we will try to see if we can put the presentation again.
Okay, so without slide, we have, yes, this one. Yes, we are studying energy requalification of light fixture and the remote control system. And we are implementing our app that's called Moved. The next slide, please, for sharing mobility in the city. And then we are working for decarbonization of bus in the city, and we are implementing our project for sustainability of energy. Yes, is the last one. Okay. In the last one, you have no, the next, please. Next one. Yes, here you have 3 of our projects. The first one is in San Girolamo, and this is finished. The other in Santo Spirito is on working, and the last one in San Paulo is on project. And so we imagine city with many change in the future. So we are working on this. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Anna. Very interesting to see what is being done in Bari. Thank you for your presentation. Now we have some minutes for questions and answers. Is there any question you want to put?
We would like to, we can see quite interesting things now in Hungary, because of course that was in the last years was a movement from, I mean, I mentioned the heating is in Hungary is the most question, that moving everything to electricity. That means that we try to make every energy from electricity. But now, as a little bit the time changing, even in Hungary, I should mention that we have nuclear power, which gives 40% of the electricity, and even we will make a new one. So we are rather strong in nuclear power. But the question now is, if the energy price is starting to higher, that whether the electricity still remains the future energy sources, or we should come back a little bit more biomass, geothermal, and so on. So we have, of course, we think, of course, in Hungary that other diverse energy sources should be used, from the wind to the geothermal and so on. I think, for example, geothermal in Hungary is an option. But so it will be quite interesting, as, for example, the gas is now more or less starting to be out sources. We don't know, but it is now the trend, how the things will change. So I think it will be a quite interesting issue. And but in this case, if, for example, geothermal is starting to become as well a stronger, or waste heat, like, for example, here in Újpest from the sewage, then district heating is starting to upgrade. And I would just mention one thing: it's not really legal, but it is legal. So for example, the district heating now in Hungary has a much lower VAT, so that's just 5% VAT compared to 27%. So they have an advantage, basically because, of course, collecting waste heat and so on. So it will be an interesting question whether the district heating could be a little bit more strength. In Hungary, as mentioned, it's about 20%. There is an option, but on the other hand, in socially, the people some people has some restriction, some negative immersion against everything which is central. So there will be a quite interesting challenge, at least in the Central and Middle Europe area or climatic area.
Thank you. We have one question from the online participants. Andres.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Really interesting presentations. Great to see the case studies as well and the replication plans going on. My thinking was, what can we do with this knowledge of these barriers? Where will these go? Because we picked out quite a few, and from the University of Groningen, that was a very comprehensive view, which we can populate with further data as well. But now I'm thinking, okay, where can we exert pressure to enforce changes? And what comes to mind as one example recently was the new European Bauhaus initiative that launched a survey to identify barriers for inclusive, integrated, livable buildings and neighborhoods. And I think that would be an interesting opportunity, and there are others where this could be somehow escalated to draw attention to these things to national and EU level. So I'm just wondering whether others have reflections on how this could be used to enact change.
Thank you, Andres. I think that's a very pertinent question. That's also the main objective of bringing the cities here, is to see that as far as science go, we are very good in involving in technologies and new and innovative solutions. But when it comes to practice, we see that in each local context and also culture, we are experiencing a lot of barriers, and all countries have different laws. So how come we create like a framework that addresses all these problems in order for us to implement really the solutions and to get there? I think it's a question for us to think about and to address them in the future after the replication plans and problem solving in the lighthouse cities. Yeah, for sure, that's something that we need to rethink as a consortium of how to get there, how to transport all this knowledge for other cities as well, in order to create replication plans for other cities that are not included in this project. Yes.
Can I add one opportunity? The goal also of the working group of Positive is to get a better network and stronger connection with other smart heritage cities. So, for example, in the Netherlands, I'm also connected with the other lighthouse cities of other European projects. And actually they are selected, the other ones are selected for the 100 climate neutral cities. And what I learned also yesterday is that they are setting up a national community with the national government. So for me, it's also an opportunity to provide information about my project to my colleagues in the other cities, so they can actually address it to the national government, because sometimes local, national government is not as far as the European law. So I think you should, try to get your information, but also use your influence on every level. On your local level, that's what I can do my best. But then other people have to address it on other levels. So you can use our information and experiences and try to put it into other people's hands to, well, hopefully, make sure that there are also some national laws going to be changed.
I also would like to reinforce your idea, because it is very important to get involved the national authorities and the agencies, and also the ones that are working locally, but the national authorities are very important to be involved, because we need to push them to also make some changes on the legislation that allow the implementation of some solutions that are needed. We need to know that we cannot implement some solutions that will not preserve the cultural heritage of protected areas, but some changes must be applied, and the national authorities regarding the cultural, they will not allow very much the introduction of innovative solutions. They want the protected areas to be the same way that they are and they were. So we need to push them to make some changes and to be in the future allowing the installation of some solutions that are innovative and will bring the old cities also to a new level, as maybe at the same level of the new cities. That's the main idea. So I agree with Suzanne. We need to involve the national authorities, and in Évora we are doing that with the national energy authorities and national cultural authorities and agencies and energy regulators.
So also from the online participants, Niels, you want to say something?
Yep, that's because of the link that is being made now with this energy performance allowance, which is a law in the Netherlands since 2016 to solve this problem of the split incentive. And this law is made by actually the housing corporations and big contractors. Housing corporations and big contractors, they sat together, they thought of this plan, and together they went to the national government here in the Netherlands and picked up the initiative to make it a law. And I think it's very important if you want to do something with law and legislation, you need your market parties, the companies behind you. Actually, if you come up as a university or a research institute to the government, my experience is that that works very bad. That's telling someone you have a problem and we have the knowledge to fix it, and that's not going to work. You really need those parties who are building houses, who install technologies, and who rent houses together to do this. So if you're going to do this, take along these actors.
Thank you, Niels. We have still time for one more question. No. I just have one regarding the circular materials for isolation in Alkmaar that was referred in the slides. What is being considered for this topic, like circular materials?
Maybe also Niels can add something about the circular materials, because I think it's one of the issues also within Van Alkmaar, but also one of the other partners, Investa. Some of the insulation that is supposed to be of circular materials, it was hard to get it insured, actually. So you have the technical possibilities, which actually also you would like to use, but then the insurance company is going to say, okay, but that might be not, like fire protective enough. So we're not going to insure this technical solution. So that's also one of the boundaries or barriers you have to sometimes face. So it's not a legal barrier, but it's still, okay, I've got a really nice solution and it's very sustainable, but I don't get it insured. So I have to find something else. So that's one of the issues we faced.
So thank you. if we don't have more questions, we can end this first part of the session. So thank you all. Thank you for your presentations.
So at this point, we will say goodbye to our online participants, but Andreas, we hope that you will stay with us and we will see you after the coffee break.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Enjoy the scenery of Bolzano.
Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Hi everyone. I hope you had a nice coffee. So happy to get started with the second segment. I will be touching on a few topics that were already mentioned. Firstly, my name is Andreas Jäger, and I'm working at the ICLE Local Government Network in the European Secretariat. So we have a lot of varied projects in the energy space, and I'm specifically working on building projects and neighborhood level projects with a strong energy and carbon focus, but I wanted to broaden the scope a bit and also talk about the more cross-sectoral approaches that we often, well, we advertise and say we really need to be more integrated, but in practice it's something tricky. So I will try to touch both of those dimensions in today's presentation before you go off into your World Cafe session. So just starting off, if my computer collaborates, a quick introduction of the city network. We are globally active. We have offices all over the world, and that does give us a lot of opportunities to engage in international policy-making processes, to really bring together the cities and speak with one voice and make declarations to draw things to the attention of national governments and international organizations. So this is a good setup, and we are following these transformation pathways that we developed to support our member cities, but of course we also work with other cities, and the idea around these pathways is that we have a very integrated approach on how to move cities to become more sustainable and resilient. And the projects that we work in at the European Secretariat, for instance, we take that knowledge and translate it into tools, knowledge products, policy recommendations, etc., for the benefit of the cities that are in our network. Coming to my area, you can see a lot is packed on this slide, and it doesn't even cover everything. But my main projects where I'm involved in deal with the energy efficiency and renewable energy integration in buildings, as well as renovation projects. Also building data, which is a big topic for policymakers. If you don't know anything about your building stock, how will you design effective policies? And we also have other projects such as the Google Action Fund, where we actually fund very local community-based actions in cities to enhance environmental sustainability. Maybe on the side, I just note that I'm also working at the European Covenant of Mayors, where I lead a group, a coalition on buildings and neighborhoods, and ICLE is also engaged in the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, which is a United Nations-led initiative. Just giving you a very quick overview of what we do, and I will skip through these quite fast, just showing you a few of the projects that we've been involved in and are involved in. One of which was the Ruggedize project, which looks at smart city solutions and implementing them in at the district or neighborhood level. And here we had a very strong energy and mobility focus in our work. We also saw that because it was infrastructure, we dealt with a lot of, well, the municipality dealt with a lot of public-private partnerships. So it is a complex and technical challenge to really retrofit a district with all the technological solutions required to enhance the energy performance, especially if you're bringing in mobility issues as well. So there have been some learnings from this. I just see that I'm showing my old slides, which is not ideal. I'm gonna actually quickly skip over to another presentation, if I may. Sorry, I've got to stop sharing my screen. Apologies for that. Or Ivana, maybe you could show the other slides, even if they're slightly squished.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, that might be best. Sorry, I just saw the one document here. So these slides are a bit compressed as they've been changed to the 4:3 format. If we skip to the next slide, please. Yeah, perfect. So here we see two of the projects I'm very much involved in, one of which is a sister project of Positive. And here we are realizing 4 positive energy buildings in 4 different climate zones in Europe. It should be said that these buildings are partly new construction, partly renovation, and not really embedded so much in the cultural heritage and the historical substance of the cities. So we've not experienced as many restrictions in terms of administrative barriers. I would like to mention PVT installations on balconies, which was a challenge. And we've also had some significant delays in one of our pilots in Spain, which was COVID related, perhaps not related to the sustainable merits of the project, but simply the local authority was overstretched. And there we are now looking at potentially a new building, which is an old palace in a historical city setting. So that will be very interesting to see whether we can unearth further barriers. Moving to the renovation side of things, we also have a one-stop shop project, which is working in Valencia and Rotterdam. And there we also encountered a few challenges, but also opportunities. Looking at the selected challenges that were highlighted in these 2 projects, but mainly focusing on the renovation program side. I think the big euro sign already shows you that, yeah, money is always an issue, but especially if you're working at the neighborhood level, it takes a lot of resources to reach out to the diverse stakeholder groups that are active in the area. And also, you cannot just do a neighborhood level project for 3 years. You need to have a long presence to build up the trust, to work with the community and get a pipeline of projects going. So this is a big issue. We've also had technical issues, and I'm sure all municipalities are aware of capacity issues in terms of the resources, in terms of the difficulty, the expertise that is needed to aggregate projects, etc., to make them bankable. These are new skill sets that are partly missing, so there's some need there. On the administrative and regulatory side, perhaps I should also note a few things that are creating issues, which includes building codes, of course. And there, one example we had was that the minimum specification for the heating systems in one country was based on data of winters 30 years ago. And that is no longer needed. You do not have to specify a heating system that is dealing with those kind of temperatures. So here, I think it would be interesting to look at the composition of the commission that decides these building codes. And if you look closer, you might find that certain companies that are involved in selling old school heating supply that are carbon intensive might be sitting on those boards and might be influencing decision making, and can therefore offer cheaper technology than the renewable technology because of this. So I think we need to take a closer look at such setups and the decision making that underpins them. Next slide, please. Yes, there we go. These I will just skip over very quickly. This is a project we are doing also in one of our member cities in Hamburg, where we're looking at transport, at infrastructure, cultural interventions, tourism management, etc., but adding the climate adaptation lens. And this is something that we see is often still underrepresented in a lot of these neighborhood level, district level plans. So I would, this is perhaps a call to action to really try to bring in not only the typical energy side of things, but also the cultural heritage components, as well as climate adaptation, which, as we know, with the fires going on and the heat waves we have experienced, it will become a very big topic. So our cities need to get ready for this. Next slide, please. So this is also a project that is dealing more on the cultural heritage side of things. And I think it's very important to emphasize that the local population needs to be activated and needs to be brought along, and it needs to be, you know, you want to have ownership in the process. You want to be co-implementing ideas, and here in Lisbon and Bologna, that is what the project team did, was really reusing cultural spaces, creating local identities or strengthening them, and really drawing the community together via living labs, via various initiatives. And the outcomes have actually spoken for themselves. They were not only energy related, but certainly I think it's just a point that is worth emphasizing. Next slide, please. This brings me to one of our member cities that has had a very long tradition in these neighborhood level approaches, and that is the city of Mannheim. And the German cities often, like, they have quite a long tradition in doing neighborhood regeneration approaches, which are cross-sectoral. And here in Mannheim, this is a good example in a socially, economically challenged, let's say, neighborhood. A lot of migration, unemployment figures are above the average. And here it was really a very intensive process of mapping stakeholders, of exploring across sectors potential interventions, co-creating, co-visioning, and co-implementing these with the community. And not only larger projects, larger measures, but also more at an urban acupuncture level. So smaller interventions that might even be temporal, to really you know, activate the population, to bring them forward, to also take action themselves and drive the process together. So this has been this is a great case that certainly brings together a lot of the components I spoke about in earlier slides. Next slide, please. Yeah, so common features, what we see is that generally we were going away from the typical classical land use planning and towards more flexible approaches that really emphasize this participation, mediation, co-design. The vertical and horizontal integration is, of course, also a major commonality and necessity, I would say, to bring on board the private sector to bring on board the cities, the communities, and the business side of things. One thing that needs to be emphasized is the protection of vulnerable and marginalized groups. And we've seen that in some of our projects, actually the impact has been negative, in a sense that we saw property prices increase, we saw potential effects of gentrification here. So it really needs to go hand in hand with targeted support for vulnerable groups, with the renovation rate wave at EU level, and the need to update our building stock. I think it's very important to keep this in our minds, that the communities living there need to have affordable housing. So that's just a quick note on that front. The smartness of our cities is undoubtedly essential. So the tools development, etc., is something we absolutely need. But I also want to emphasize that the physical presence, having a local office, engaging on the ground is very key. Next slide, please. Having looked at these approaches, what you see is a quite classical management approach. And I won't go through this, but ICLE has one of these, which can be easily replicated. And it's a lot about just getting the support, long-term support and funding, ideally, doing this kind of stakeholder mapping and activation, analyzing, setting up monitoring is super important. So the data side of things, and then going through this visioning and co-designing, co-implementation process. Next slide, please. Some success factors, there are many. I think the long-term financing is huge. And we also see that our cities often struggle in finding the human resources or funding the human resources to take on these additional tasks of communication with the communities, but also in terms of project aggregation for renovation projects. These things are very challenging at the moment. Also emphasizing the co-creation element. I think there you really need to invest a lot of time and effort in working with private sector, working with researchers and other stakeholders. Also monitoring frameworks, as I already mentioned, you need to gather this data in a GDPR compliant way, of course, but this needs to be integrated in a feedback loop to then re-inform the policy making and city management approach, so that you can correct your initiatives and improve on them and optimize them. And lastly, I think it's very key is that we need to look at, or we need to keep in mind the climate adaptation side, which is somewhat missing or a lower priority at the moment, and in general, perhaps at the decision-making level rather than energy and the climate mitigation. And in conjunction with that, I think nature-based solutions are, of course, also something we need to be exploring more. Yeah, that's all. Sorry for being a bit longer, but I think I didn't go over too much. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Andres. Does anyone have any question for Andres? Yes. Sorry, your name, please.
Giulia Piani from the JRC of the European Commission. I have two questions, actually. The first one is, did you develop any technique that you would recommend for the stakeholders mapping? And the second question is, have you explored any way of making sure that gentrification is minimized, or at least that enough time is given for people living in a certain area to adapt?
Sorry, Andres, you're
muted, I guess.
I just noticed, yeah. For the stakeholder mapping, of course, there are common techniques. We tend to not be so, at an ICLE, as a city network, we are not as close to the citizens. So this is a process that is usually taken by the local authority itself, and they are then encouraged to firstly map across their silos, let's say, within the administration, but then also make the bridges to the regional government level, and then expanding into the local community and the business side of things. I think, yeah, I cannot suggest off the top of my head a standardized approach that we use, but it is rather time intensive, I would say. And when you're doing it at the neighborhood level, that is compounded even more, that you really need to look at the population structures and the income structures. And there's various data sets that exist, but that varies from country to country as well. So sorry that I can't give you a clear answer on that. With regard to the gentrification elements, in our projects, this has not been, let's say, a KPI. So it's not measured. It is, however, something where we see a lot of pullback when we're talking to local governments about positive energy buildings, because the affordability side is so key to them, and they are very, very aware of the critical situation that people are in, not only energy poor, so-called, but actually, you know, significant segments of the population. So I think it's, yeah, it's a challenging issue in terms of the passing on the cost to the tenants for energy renovation activities. There are different approaches with different national governments having caps or having other ways of making sure that the vulnerable community is protected. But again, there's within the projects, we've not explored that in so much detail.
Thank you.
Anyone has any more questions?
I have a question about the, thank you, Andreas, for the interesting presentation. I'm Hafiz from KU Leuven, Belgium. I have a question about the access project. You mentioned that PVT panels were installed at the rooftop, photovoltaic thermal panel, I guess.
We are installing these, but at rooftop level and not vertically on the building facade or balcony. And that was a regulatory issue that we had.
Okay, so I was just wondering that the efficiency of these PVT panels are usually not very high. So they're like, because they're producing solar and thermal, so it's usually low. So I was just wondering if that was considered into account while planning for its installation.
Yeah, again, there our technical colleagues would have to give you a definitive answer. The PVT, I mean, I think it's in these cases, there's also the need to have a lot of thermal energy in the buildings, so which is a huge consumer. So that is why the choice went to PVT. And I do believe that the dual sun panels are very efficient, and actually the people who specified this technology, I'm sure, did think in the back of their minds why this is justified.
Sounds good. But it's interesting.
We can get in touch and I can provide you further information on the exact specifications.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Questions? If not, thank you, Andreas. Thank you for your presentation and your contribution to this discussion group. We will go ahead for the World Cafe discussions, where we will divide the group in 2 parts. So 2 questions. We will have 20 minutes to discuss each question, and then in the end present the main findings. I would recommend, since I see that are very different stakeholders on the energy field here, to really interact and take the most out of this for yourself and to bring to your workplace after this session. So hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Andrea. Bye-bye.
Have a nice World Cafe session. Enjoy. Bye-bye.